Welcome to Vision One Artist Shoutout. My name is Ella Beth, and you might notice we're actually in a different space today, which is kind of exciting. You know, my mum used to say a change is as good as a holiday, so I kind of feel like we're doing Bora Bora today. But for this week's episode, I've got a guest that I recently met and was very, very thrilled to watch his band play at a big showcase event that happened down at Dark Horse. Shout out Scully recently. So without further ado, I would love to welcome Cleve.
That's great.
Thank you so much for coming and being part of our show.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the invite.
So we've been chatting a little bit about you and your music journey and what you're currently doing. Can you just give a brief synopsis of what your musical journey, how you got into music and what it's been like up till now? Is that brief?
Yeah, it's not exactly brief. How I started in music?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, probably most musicians that I know, maybe you, I started watching MTV back in the day when they had videos, by the way.
Right.
So I'm a
MTV
little
was
older
cool.
than you, so we're talking about a different, decade. But I watched, oh my God, I was blown away. I do have an older half brother, and he would listen to Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, all this stuff. And I remember vaguely. But then when I hit the MTV and I was able to watch, Van Halen and all that, I was just like, oh man. And I was that kid who was had the tennis racket pretending it was a guitar. By the way, I never learned how to play guitar. But
I love that.
Jumping on the bed like I was Eddie Van Halen and wishing I could be before I really realized I wanted to be a singer. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a guitar player. And I even took up bass for a minute, got lessons. Didn't really go too well. I was just too keyed up and impatient, and I wanted everything yesterday.
Okay.
I think I'm much better now. I still want certain things yesterday, but I'm much better now. Time. I'm more patient for sure.
Okay.
Those things if you take your time, they tend to be a little bit better.
Right.
But back then, it was like, no way.
Let's just do it right now.
I'm 12 years old. I want to get famous today.
Yeah.
I want to be able to play like Eddie Van Halen. Well, tough luck, kid. That ain't going to happen. But
yeah.
So that, of course, just watching and hearing, and then in high school, that's elementary school, and I just couldn't take my eyes off, MTV, and just seeing all the stuff in the 80s of all the bands coming out from Van Halen to, Tom Petty.
Yeah.
I always loved, and I still do, of course, Tom Petty and all the timeless is what I call them bands, like John Cougar Mellencamp. In my growing up, it was the Pink Houses version of John Cougar. Of course, now that I'm older, I've also dipped into his other catalogs. I'm like, wow, the acoustic singer-songwriter folk type stuff. And then also, of course, the Motley Crues and the harder rock stuff. I went through a huge metal phase for a little while, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
But anyway, so and then high school came. I had friends who could actually play music. Who were just great. My buddy played a Rickenbacker bass, like John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin.
Cool.
And, my other friend played guitar, and one of those guys who was a little socially awkward, who never did anything much outside a rehearsal room, the house, one or two shows maybe in his whole life. But he was the guy who could be in it. He could just one of those rare. He could hear something and play it right away.
Incredible.
And he was just such a badass.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I was just blown away. I got to do something. I want to play. But I knew, and then my stepmother, she was a singer, Atlanta chorus and stuff like that for a long time, and then her side quartets and things like that over the years. And I saw her perform actually at the Fox when I was
wow.
8 years
Oh,
old.
Fancy. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very few. I hadn't talked much about that, but she. It was like an Atlanta chorus type of thing.
Yeah.
But she was singing, and they did all the makeup and the moves and all this stuff. But so yeah, it was like 8 years old. I remember going to the Fox, seeing her, and then I discovered the MTV and the rock and roll and all this stuff, and I was just like, okay, this is it. This is my path. I got to do this. But then I found skateboarding. So
okay.
I became a serious
The singing skateboarder?
Yeah, that would have been... I missed out on a money opportunity right there. Where were
TikTok
you-
wasn't
where were
around
you-
there. I don't know if it was like.
Yeah, that would have been somebody who hears that now is going to go
Yeah,
to that tomorrow
I'm gonna be the
and
singing
make like
skateboarder.
it's going to go.
I want the credit on that. Royalties.
Yeah, that's wow, man, that was a good idea. Okay, well, I missed out on that. Thanks a lot for depressing me.
Sorry.
The singing skateboarder. That's actually a great name. I found skateboarding. I really got so enthralled with that. So it was between skateboarding and music and all that stuff. And then finally, when I was a little bit older, and I got into a crowd that was definitely, and this is where we kind of touched on partying. So I started partying at a younger age, and probably the skateboarder crowd really, I think, got me into that. You know? And but again, looking at the musicians like we talked about, you're looking at all your idols and all these people, and they're partying, and you got the drugs and the girls, and I guess I was
rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was semi-interested in the girls at this time, but skateboarding, I was like 14, so it was kind of both. But I started, doing, experimenting with certain things, paraphernalia and drugs and so forth. And that kind of took a hold of me for quite a few years. Being said, during that time also, I was able to, that's perfect, boss. Thank you. He just turned my headphones up a little bit more.
Oh, nice.
That's great.
Nice,
yeah,
cool.
That's absolutely wonderful. So, from there, I started kind of going to clubs, high school, local Atlanta rock clubs.
Okay.
Most of them, some of them here now, one or two. Most of them are long gone.
Okay.
But at the time, it was such a great scene. My experience started in the mid-'90s. Guys I was watching had started in the late 80s, early 90s. The generation above me and my generation, and there's a generation below me, and I think there's a half in between.
Right.
And watching all these cats, because growing up, I mean, who came from Atlanta? Collective Soul, Black Crowes, REM from Athens, and all these rock bands. I was like, oh man! And of course, then I was into some of the West Coast bands like LA Guns and the Motley Crue, Skid Rows, and all the stuff you grow up listening to. And again, Tom Petty's and the John Cougar Mellencamp. So I'm glad I had a little bit of that in me because timeless to me.
Right.
And I think I have that piece now has the tools in the toolbox that you use in life.
Absolutely, the tools. Yeah,
in the last several 10, 15, 20 years, those tools, I'm like, oh, it doesn't have to be just this. I can use the toolbox of the influence of the timeless rock. You don't exactly have to look a certain way.
Right.
And I like to be, quote unquote, as much age-appropriate looking as possible. When you see certain bands, they just kind of look cool naturally how they are. It's like they're not trying. Or some of the bands that are still out from that day, they still kind of do what they were doing then, but they look still cool doing it, and it works.
Right.
But I don't like the whole trying too hard thing.
Right. Tommy Lee still looks cool.
He's badass.
I like your look. I feel like this is probably something, this is one of the first things that I noticed actually. I don't know if anyone said this to you. I feel like they may have. But has anyone ever said that you kind of give like Jared Leto? I'm not the first one, am I? I'm not even the fifth or the 10th one.
So back in the old band, I was always clean faced and younger, and my buddies made fun of me. Man, you look just like a girl, and I was pretty. I was pretty back then. So I started growing a beard to be a little tougher, and I ended up just really kind of taking to it. But yes, I've got Jared Leto a lot, and when I just kind of do a little bit of a facial hair, sometimes I used to get Miles Kennedy sometimes from Slash's band.
Okay.
But I'll take both of those.
Yeah.
It's all good. I mean, neither one of them are an insult. Jared Leto's not an insult. I don't, and I like, especially some of his raw acoustic more stuff. And I like 30 Seconds to Mars is great. I get it a lot. It's funny.
Okay, all right.
I got it the other night at Whole Foods. Guy, I'm checking out the dude. First of all, this kid's like, I don't know, 18, 19, probably young.
Yeah.
He goes, I have my hoodie on, and I just got out of yoga, and I'm going over there, and my hair's even pulled back, and he goes, man, I don't want to insult you, but I mean, has anybody ever told you you look like Jared Leto? I'm like,
every day.
So I don't know if it's too much. Sometimes when things start looking too much, then I got to change it up.
Okay.
Because I do have my own identity.
Right.
It's not.
Absolutely.
No, and certainly it's a compliment all day long. As far as my girlfriend laughs, she's like, oh yeah, I guess you do look like that. She didn't think about it at first, and I'm like, somebody just told me this again. And she's like what? And
then she goes, like, actually, now I can make it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. But to be fair, the bass player in your band also reminds me a little bit of Jack Black. So it's kind of like it's like an all-star band.
Blake. So yeah, he had his hair down. So he's got a big beard and he has hair down. 9 out of 10 times he wears a trucker hat. That night he didn't. It's kind of funny, and he's, he's just a rock and roll guy, man. He's a great dude, badass. Plays every instrument, including a steel. And his wife is a singer, is an amazing artist named Heather Luttrell.
Okay.
She'll kill me for saying this, but she won, what was that? Or she came in second on the, it was Rockstar that Dave Navarro did the host. This was a long time ago. One of the TV things that was years ago.
Okay. Like one of those X Factor kind of.
No. Music, all music.
Okay.
Like, oh man, I'll slip in my mind because I don't really care about them very much. But the Kelly Clarkson won them years ago, and
like American Idol.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
One of those, and I can't remember which one.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, that was a long time ago. But she's very. We pull up that video, and sometimes she's like, "Take that down.
Stop it."
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway, but she happens to be an incredible talent. Sometimes he plays with her. She's got a full band, but he plays with her sometimes bass or. Her band's incredible. Heather Luttrell.
Okay.
Wow. It's more country rock.
Okay. I've been
voice
getting
is
unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I've been getting a little bit of a music history and education about the Atlanta, not so much the Georgia music scene, but like the Atlanta music scene from Cleveland. So I appreciate that. I've got some names. I have to go do some homework.
She's got to do some homework. She's here from Australia and from Asia, Southeast Asia, where she lived for a long time. Yeah. So being that she's doing this, hosting podcasts, talking to other musicians in whatever genre, there's so much history here in Atlanta, and of course Georgia, but Atlanta as well, that people, it kind of gets overshadowed. I mentioned a couple of names to her, and she was like, wait, they're from here?
What?
Or who is that?
Surprise!
It's just, there's a lot going on. People don't think about it.
Right.
Maybe every stage like that, I don't know, but
that's so
certain things, certain bands, certain artists, they're from someone, because, you just know.
Right.
But, yeah.
So your Atlanta-based band, Ghost of You, I assume so, because we were talking about you and some of your previous projects and you being a songwriter. Do you write all of the music for Ghost of You, or do you?
No way.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Let me tell you something. That goes back to I was too keyed up to learn guitar and bass because I was too busy skateboarding. I was too busy getting into other activities involving, drugs and drinking and going into clubs because I was so focused on weaseling my way in underage and then weaseling my way into what I knew was the cool crowd, which they were. Yeah. Some of those cats that I met then went on to do and I'm still friends with a lot of them today, doing great music, got the deal, went on to sell records and do all this stuff. And I'm lucky to have a lot of those relationships still.
I think that's a testament to the culture of the underground scene music community here. The fact that there is still that community.
There is.
I'm on the outside, but I can see it. I really appreciate that.
It's there, and a lot of guys that you saw with us the other night were kind of some old school guys.
Right.
So like myself.
It was a cool
being
crowd.
Said, it was cool because we were all kind of going, hey, let's just have fun. And then Scully put this thing together and with Curtis over at Ten High, and it was really it was a fun thing. Yeah. And really, it was our first show.
Right.
To get our feet wet.
Right. Just emerged out of the scene as artists in all of your own rights, having played in all sorts of incredible acts, and you've come together. And
we did one with our buddy Mike Frosch, who played drums with us. He did play a couple of the tracks from the studio for this project, and he did one live show for us pre-COVID. So we went to Smithsonian Bar, we played a show, and to our surprise, we had a great big-ass crowd upstairs. I mean, there was almost 200 people for us. It was great.
Wow.
And none of us had played in a while. And it was our first show.
Cool.
Soon thereafter, COVID. So we took advantage of that time down when everything was okay for us to get together and write. And so our buddy, our producer, sort of a silent member of the bands, are usually a producer and a writer, right? So for us, it's Tuck Smith. He's in a band called Tuck Smith and the Restless Hearts, another one you need to look up, and I think you'd like him. He's an incredible, timeless rock guy who not only has his band's been fairly successful, and his band now is continuing to grow, and record deals and tours. He's one of the hardest working musicians I've ever met, and I praise him for that. And not only that, he backs it up with his talent for sure.
Cool.
But I'm lucky that been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
So as friends, he was like, "Hey man, you hadn't done anything in a while with music," and he could tell it was like irking me. It's like you're only another named musician once told me, "You're only as big as your last hit."
Right.
I'm like, true. And I hadn't done anything for a long time, and I certainly hadn't had a hit. The old band did. I'm proud of everything we did, and we did well considering what we did.
That was Rochester Ruin.
Rochester Ruin,
okay.
Yeah. Put a little dent in the music scene and that kind of rock and roll, kind of dirty rock and roll world, and I'm very proud of it. But because of that, we all went on to do other things, and we built relationships from that. We had, we can dive into that if you want. But meanwhile, Tuck was like, "Man, that was great, but what are we doing now? And let's write something to give you something to be proud of now."
Yeah.
And that's kind of really how it went down. And because we're old friends, but he also started coming to my yoga studio, and we started just hanging out a lot more. And so anyway, that's kind of how it started. And that song "Heartbreak Creepin'" was our first one that we wrote, and then we went and recorded it. And I got other guys on there, and I was like, man, I kind of want to do a band, So
cool.
But he and I did another song called "Walk Away," which last year we sold. So that's great.
Okay. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and
that's
cool. Funny because he was like, "If it's on any site, anywhere, take it down now. Contracts coming over, managers sending this. We got to do this. It's going to the artist and all this." And so I think it's going to come out. He told me the name of the female artist. I think it's a female. I don't know. It's going to be Netflix or something. I don't know. But anyway,
cool.
Regardless, I'm happy that we sold it.
Yeah.
It's good for us to have had that. And now we're writing a song that we're going to also present to try to sell, and the band will do it too. But so I'm just lucky to be able to write and work with him. So we'll get together, come up with a bit of an idea, and then he and I will sit and do lyrics. And sometimes, and maybe you've experienced this, but writing can be an incredibly painful process.
Yeah.
And this couple weeks ago, we were working on something new, and I was in Nashville working with him, and painful. One line, and this song's not done yet. We've got the concrete, the basement of it. He's building the demo now. But we're there, and we got stuck on one line in the chorus. The rest of the chorus is done. One line. All right, let's go eat lunch.
Yeah.
Come back, nothing. And we go skateboarding. Come back, get a good little placeholder line.
Yeah.
And then that's for now.
Yeah.
So I go back in a few weeks probably. He's about to do a tour, but when he comes back, we'll figure out a time, and I'll go back up there, and we'll do rough demo vocals, and then we'll come back here. The band will learn the song.
Mm-hmm. And then you record up there?
And then we normally do here, but
okay.
we're going to do this song up there, I think.
Okay.
With some people he's working with. He's working with some name drop folks, and he's doing really well up there, which is great. He's producing a lot of bands. He's also helping write stuff in his own bands, doing X, Y, and Z. They're great. So it's nice to be even unintentionally attached to him in a way that he's attached to the band.
Right,
and it's almost kind of comical, because then now people are like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, you didn't care, but now you do because of this guy," which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, then once they hear the song, hopefully the integrity of the song speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So there's that. And I'm just glad that we get to work with him. And of course, in the past, we worked with wonderful names. I also get to work with another guy I do now named Jesse Aston, works for a wonderful vocal coach. We mentioned some names earlier from people who are from Atlanta that she's worked with over the years over at Jan Smith Studios.
Okay. I've heard of Jan Smith. Recently, I think I just liked them on Instagram, actually.
She's a well-known woman, and both as a singer-songwriter, artist, producer, and vocal coach for the greats. Some of the names we talked about earlier, Usher included.
So cool. I didn't even know he's from Atlanta. That's crazy. Anyway.
Yeah. And Bieber and all those guys. So, yeah. But so I was lucky enough to see her and have a relationship with them. And then one of her producers, Jesse Aston, he's a rock guy, but does everything, singer-songwriter, helps her with the R&B, whatever. Music is music.
Right,
you know?
right.
And so he and I do a lot of stuff together too. We just finished writing our third song. And we haven't put them out yet, but we're going to. We're just not getting around to it.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of him. God, just really. So I get to do some more different type of stuff with him, and then over here I get to do the rock stuff with Tuck.
Right.
And being with these guys in the studio is like taking a master class on. I got a lot of work to do.
Right.
And
right,
man,
right.
these guys are great. And it seems like back in the day I used to be a little more, I was faster.
Mm-hmm.
But reality is, I was less concerned with the integrity of the lyrics. I was less concerned with the integrity of the melody.
Right, than just
now,
putting the product out. Right, absolutely.
Now I'm like, I'm starting in my older age, sometimes slowly, that's me.
Yeah.
You learn, okay, well, there's a different kind of process. And again, technology's changed everything anyway. So you're not sitting in a room burning $1,000 a day or $1,500 a day trying to figure one thing out. We can build something, demo it, learn it, change it, then go, record it.
Yeah.
But, anyway, so I digress.
No, that's interesting that you say that. I feel the same way. To my detriment, sometimes as a songwriter as well, I will avoid writing or finishing things if I don't think I will have like the level of lyricism that I want. I'm like, if this is just gonna sound like something that would be played in an ice cream shop, even if it was popular, I don't want it like, and it's hard.
It's a fine line too, because tongue in cheek and money. If a commercial ice cream shop were to buy it,
right?
You're like, well, okay, this will float me for a while. I mean, jingles exist for a reason.
They do.
So that's a different story,
right? And there's an industry for that.
Yeah.
I dream of the day that I'll be able to put more metaphor into what I write rather than it being quite as realistic. I think most writers can write like very much their experience, but being able to write metaphor or write someone else's experience, that's what I really strive for. And
I mean, that's almost exactly, and that's wonderful because that's taking it almost to a cinema type.
Right.
You're writing a story.
Yeah, story writing.
There's one artist here, and I know you don't know because you're not from here.
Not from
but
Atlanta.
you need to look up, and everyone knows who this guy is from old bands from the 80s and to now. His name's James Hall. Mm-hmm. He was a band years ago called Marry My Hope, generation before mine, but wonderful. I remember them being on MTV.
Okay.
Right, cool. Anyway, but now my buddy, one of my best friends, plays bass for him and produces a lot, and he's Bruce Bunkovich, shout out. James Hall and the Future Bold, or you can look at James Hall's other bands. God, I'm just a promotion for everybody else.
It's amazing.
James Hall and the Pleasure
awesome.
Club. But the reason I bring him up is because he's one of those guys when you listen to the lyrics and other musicians who are much bigger musicians than him as far as commercial success.
Right.
James Hall has a cult following anywhere.
Okay.
But he didn't have that commercial success that should have had.
Mm-hmm.
He's an incredible talent, but he's one of those guys you listen to his stuff, and you also take a deeper moment and you listen to the lyrics, and you're like,
speechless.
He's just that guy. And,
yeah.
I don't think that's so common.
Right.
I think there's great writers. I'm lucky to be able to know a handful of great writers. I'm not one of them. I get to work with them sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
And then it helps me become a better writer.
Yeah.
But man, some of these guys just mind blowing, and the poetry of the song and how it comes together and like a
and
rock.
the word painting and the imagery.
Right.
It like
you can visualize the whole thing like an actual movie or a story, and you're like, and it's a 3-minute rock song.
Yeah.
Like what? What is
incredible.
that? Anyway, so again, going back to I'm lucky I was surrounded by a lot of that growing up here.
Right.
Because while I wish that at a young age I was able to have my shit together a lot more, but also, well, no regrets. I am where I am because of what it is.
Rock and roll.
Right, exactly. I mean, but I look at some cats who at a young age, some of these bands that were younger, Black Crowes or guys I grew up watching, again, James Hall and his first band, Marry My Hope, it's like you listen to some of these guys that were 18, 19, 20, 21, early 20s who, even my buddy Tuck, young age, just a great the stuff they were putting out that age, whether it was independent or on a record company or whatever it was just, you know, Black Crow is one of my favorite bands. Just, wow, listen to those lyrics.
Yeah.
Listen to this. I mean, yeah, they had a producer. They had someone help, of course. That's what producers do.
Yeah.
Come in, they cross T's, dot I's, and make it better.
Right.
Because that's why they do what they do. They're
right.
better.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly.
But it's still, you're like, God, that when I was that age, I'm almost embarrassed. You know,
Right.
I was in bands. I was playing the scene that back then, talking about the scene then was totally different. And you talked about seeing some support the other night. You should have seen it in the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh man, you could go any club, any night of the week, and there'd be upwards 300 people there.
That's incredible.
Everywhere.
That's so cool.
But in like anything, it shifts and changes. It may be the worst band.
But there'll still be 300 people there. Why
They'd be
not?
hanging out, you know. I mean, you know, any given night, of course, weekends will probably be 300 people. Weeknights, you'd still have 80, 100 people hanging out. You know, it was
Yeah.
crazy, and I got to see that, and I was so glad to have a taste of being a part of, even a tiny little part of that machine at the time, and watching the guys above me do it, and then watching the guys right under me doing it,
Yeah.
and kind of everybody meeting in the middle, and
Yeah.
as we get older, appreciating maybe where we came from, and like I said earlier, I'm involved in this documentary about the Atlanta music, the RTM, Rehearse Too Much culture, which is, there used to be a rehearsal space here called Rehearse Too Much, late 80s, early 90s through 2000s.
That's a great name
everyone,
for rehearsal space. That's great.
rehearsal, yeah. It was here forever, and everybody who was anybody from back in the day that you know now rehearsed there.
Okay.
And so the stories is what we're kind of talking about in this documentary, and the scene, the camaraderie, and the producers, and the bands, and the scene, and the all the bad stuff that goes along with the drugs and the alcohol, the girls, the whole nine, right?
Yeah.
And just some of the artists, from the singer-songwriter culture to the punk rock to the rock and roll to all of it, you know.
That's
and we're
so
really
cool.
focusing overall blanket of rock and roll in that particular documentary, but. So that's
And
going to be
also,
called
like, what we
Atlanta Rock
mentioned-
Doc. Rehearse Too Much. Something. I think
So-
that's what we're
okay.
calling it.
It's a working
look out
title.
for- It's
Okay.
a work in progress. So.
I like that. I rehearse too much. That's such a great name. But I think it's great that, like you mentioned, is that like it's highlighting a different part of the Atlanta music scene because it ebbs and flows, it changes,
Yeah.
you know, and especially in the age of technology, obviously music everywhere has changed very quickly. But to know that there's like still that community who came up in that time, you know, I don't know. At least in some of the cities that I've lived in, there's been scenes, and then the scenes have just sort of like died out. Whereas here, it didn't die out. It's just an undercurrent now.
That's a good way to put it. I think that's true.
I mean, that's how I feel like I see it.
I wish you could have seen it years ago. Though I do like that statement, because what you have is a lot of guys who have gone on to do great things in some of the big bands. Some of the cats from Atlanta still wear Atlanta like a badge, you know, in any genre here.
ATO.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's like Atlanta, you know, and you know, some of our friends who've gone on to do some really big stuff, whether it's behind the scenes or not, you know, or you know, in the band, they've gone on to always wear this. I'm from the South. I'm from Atlanta, and I wear this like a badge, even though I might live in wherever, LA or New York, whatever. Seems like a lot of people come back to their roots. You know,
Yeah.
it seems like, and I think that's probably true for a lot of artists and a lot of people
Right.
and a lot of cities, and
Yeah.
so family is probably a big part of that.
Yeah.
But also kind of where you grew up, where you feel like you know there's some places, and things have changed here over the years, both visually with the city, of course, but also in the scene that you're talking about. You know, I grew up in a time where, and it wasn't all that long ago,
Right.
where we would, you know, when you get a band, I mean, you're a singer-songwriter,
Yep.
you write most of your stuff,
Yep.
and you play an instrument.
Right.
I don't. So there's my like, oh man, I love that you do.
I mean, okay, wait. In saying that, there's like I play the ukulele. I write my songs on
First
the
of all, you play
ukulele.
the ukulele?
I write my songs on
You
the
should be
ukulele.
getting a lot more money, because there is a demand for that.
What?
I've had countless
I guess-
ukulele. Yes.
I don't perform with the ukulele. I write my songs on it. That's how I write. But I don't perform with it
shit.
because after a while it gets a little bit bling bling, and
I
there's
don't
only
know.
so much you can listen to that.
Do you
But
play
anyway.
guitar?
Like 3 chords, not amazing.
So you're like me with that. Probably you're better than me with that.
I can F chord.
So you write with people.
Yeah, well, I'm beginning to do more of writing with people. I have in the past. Up till now, songwriting for me has been quite a personal thing. Again, that has been a lot because I write from my personal experience. So me wanting to write with other people is because I want to get into the storytelling side of things and being able to like think from other people's perspectives, put myself in other people's shoes. So
yeah. I wish I had more, and I'm learning as we all do with life experiences and et cetera. So I can sit down and write, and I can write a story, I can write an idea, and then I might take that idea. One way that Tuck and I write is I come up with a list of words and thoughts, stream of thoughts kind of, and then I'll sit down with him and go, and then we kind of come up with an idea subject, and we go from there.
Cool.
And we might use any of those. We might use none of those. We might come up with something else. I don't know. But talking about that personal thing, it's funny because back in the day, again, not all that long ago, but I was like, oh, check this out. Here you go. Look at what I've done. Look at how cool this is. And I want everybody to see this. It's funny because the song that we sold, I wouldn't let anybody hear for 6 months. It's just like, I was just holding on. Everybody's like, I tell people, they're laughing at me like, why? And I'm like, dude, I can't explain it. It was just private, even though it was one of the best things I've ever been a part of writing, because the song itself was a little different. It was going to be a Ghost of You song, which it's got piano in it and other stuff, and it would have to have been sort of rocked up a little bit. We had to change it slightly for the band to do it, which would have been cool. We could still play it live, of course. But dare I say, it was my version of anything sort of, and with obviously Tuck's brilliant help, Beatles-esque, vibe. It was really cool. We had a great piano player come in and play a real piano, and just the whole nine on it. And it was just, I didn't let anybody hear it for months.
That's amazing. And then you ended up selling it after that.
And then we ended up selling it, and I was like, I think people heard it for like a month. And a great problem to have. But I'm like, man, but it was out of my normal. Because normally I want to show off, hey, check this out. And I still want to, I'm proud of this, so listen.
Right.
And I was proud of it, but also was not ready to let it go.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Right. No, I think that's a very poignant statement. Like, I wasn't ready to let it go. Because, no, it's true. Like, anything that you create as a creative person, whatever creative thing you're in, whatever you create, like, that is your baby.
And it's cool because I'm in that space now.
Yeah.
Whereas before I wasn't. I'd probably let people hear stuff before that they shouldn't have heard. Check this out. Even in Rochester Ruin, we were really excited. We had a lot going on at the time. Our time was 2007 through about 2014 and 13, 14. We had a decent little run, and as staying as a band and the things that we accomplished and did and got help doing and who was involved with us and. Looking back, I wish we would have put more energy into. It's kind of mute now, but a little more. Like I wish I could go back and change some of the lyrics or some of those things. But for the time and where we were at and what we were doing,
it was great.
It was great and it made sense. And again, I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
But I'd be like, oh, check this out, and everybody else, dude, that's a rough mix. How dare you let anybody hear? I'm like, but I'm so. Good thing the internet didn't use it. I was liable to get in trouble because of
on putting it on MySpace.
I just put it on MySpace, exactly. Put this on MySpace. Go check it out. Dude, that's a rough demo. It's not even done. Doesn't matter.
You insulted my ear holes.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
That's so funny.
It hurts my ears.
We learn. And so we evolve. And
luckily, there wasn't that happening, and I didn't have any, it came out when it was supposed to come out. But, and learning from those experiences, because we worked with some great guys during that time. And it just, anyway, and I was surrounded by great musicians, and like I am now. So with that song, Ghost of You has another song and a video done.
Cool. Cool.
And
is there a drop date for that, or is it no? Okay. Right.
It's one of those. It's been done. Like Southbound is one that's out now. Tuck is actually in that one. I'm in some of his videos too, so it's funny. And that actually has a wonderful actress friend of mine named Gisette Valentine. She just did a couple episodes of Will Trent.
I was going to say, you posted about her on your Instagram story.
Yeah,
I don't stalk the people I have on my podcast. Not at all.
I guess you kinda. You have to. You got to know what's going on.
It's research.
So her and her soon-to-be husband, or he's a stunt man, and she's an actress and a stunt woman, and she's gone on to do. She's in a whole series called Ruthless on Netflix and some other stuff. I'll punch her in a second. There's your what do you call it? I give you a little
I don't know.
Little promo.
Yeah, little promo.
I'm punching you
seconds,
into your, and well, yeah, she's definitely making that for herself. I'm so proud of her. But it was really cool because it was during that time when everything was kind of still slow going on during the slow time, COVID time, and. How many times can I say time? Did you catch that? I just said it like 10. And so it was a perfect opportunity to do this video. So another director friend of mine in movie and films, he directed that video. So that video's, and Harold edited, the guy I work with a lot now. And man, that video, I don't know that we could do that again. I mean, we had a crew, we had the actors, we had stunts, we had, and Tuck was here, and he played the kingpin of the heist, and my buddy Rob, who was in my old band Rockets to Ruin, and I'll definitely plug him for being in a much badass, bigger band now. He's in Skid Row. And that came about.
Right.
Rachel Boland from Skid Row used to manage Rockets to Ruin.
Okay.
So we did a lot of shows with those guys, and later Rob got the gig. So it was great. Again, it's big city, small town. It's kind of how we are, and just Rachel had moved 2 years before and kind of got involved with some local cats, and we got lucky and became friends, and he liked what we were doing, and he took us on, and here's a guy I used to watch on MTV.
Right.
And was a multi-platinum and top 10 guy. Right. And getting to know him, this guy's incredibly awesome, just a great guy, obviously a great musician, but then he took us on, and we worked with him, and he produced us, and we went in and did the record, and then we had our run, and our run lasted as long as it did, and we've got some good stories there, and some great stories, some bad stories. We didn't like each other as within the band. Rachel always supported us and still supports that at time and supports us now in different ways. And
I think I have this theory. Certainly for at least a couple of the bands that I've been, I have this theory that a very important part of a band having the kind of chemistry that good bands have is having a little bit of trauma bonding. And honestly, and I die on that hill because I've seen it time and time again.
Me and the bass player from that band, Chris Taylor, and we laugh about it, but he and I, and this is no secret. I mean, look, we were supposed to do some things we couldn't do at the time. There was a lot of drinking going on, and there was a lot of other things going on, including, of course, egos, because we were doing some bigger stuff, and I like to say we were old enough to know better, but we were still young enough to be stupid, and at the same time, we just made some not great decisions. We were too busy riding the train and not really thinking about. Rob was actually great at that, which is why he's doing what he's doing now. He's really just wonderful at sitting back, pausing, and thinking. I'm much better at it now, and Chris is too. We all are. But anyway, Chris and I were like, we had that chemistry a lot, and what made our, and I think he would agree with this. What made us have such a great chemistry live and on stage was the fact that off stage we kind of couldn't stand each other,
right,
for a long time,
right.
In fact, we didn't talk for a long time, and only recently, in the last 3 months, have we communicated here and there, niceties.
Right. Politeness, yeah.
But thanks to Rob, actually, we all ended up going to somewhere not so long. Me and Rob went to see him play not so long ago, and hung out, and we've seen each other over the years, of course, here and there, and since everything ended, and we've all gone on to do other things that are as reality is, that band's so far in the rear view,
Right.
it doesn't even matter. But at the end of the day, that band is also what allowed us to create,
meet the people that you
correct,
right.
meet the people and
Again,
build
it's the network and the community.
to go. We went around the country and played shows and got. I mean, we got banned from the most notorious club in the country, the Whiskey A Go Go.
I thought you were going to say the Viper Room. Is that one still open?
No, the Viper Room is great.
Okay. Whiskey A Go Go.
We didn't
I don't
get
know
kicked
where
out
that
of
is.
there. I did play that in a different project a few years later, living in Los Angeles. But the Whiskey A Go
Mad
Hollywood,
rock star energy.
yeah. And Hollywood, we got to we were headlining the Whiskey A Go Go one night. But you know, that's such a great venue because it's still, I mean, the history speaks for itself. And for me, as a singer, to play the same, and I'm sure this is true for every musician in the world, and you hear it on every single documentary for the last 40 years. For me, like a lot of
Excuse me.
playing that venue was cool, just mainly because, you know, Jim Morrison stood on that stage, The Doors, and then you go back to all that kind of era, and you're just like, oh my God, which is another favorite band of mine when I was younger, still is, The Doors. But then you go to, you know, later years, Van Halen gets signed out of the Whiskey, or, you know, I don't know if they got signed out of there, but they you know, they were huge there, and all these bands that you grew up watching, of course, played the Whiskey. And to be able to, on the same, I don't know if it's the same wood, I'm just imagining it's the same wood stage that Jim Morrison touched.
Right, walk the planks is the same, you know, that's really cool. Tread the boards, as they say.
Yeah, so we did that, and that was one of those funny stories later.
Right, as
that
it is.
night wasn't, but, so, you know, that was kind of the beginning of the end for us. You know, we would do things and get us in trouble, and alcohol might have been involved, and some other things might have been involved, and ego is definitely involved, and us getting not along was involved, and you know, we got banned from the Whiskey A Go Go. What did that do for us?
Rockstar.
It gave us. I think we had more downloads that week. I don't know, you know, on iTunes. Probably so. Because it gave us a little more. On one hand, it gave us credibility. On the other hand, it's a little embarrassing.
Right.
You know, it's like, but now.
I was going to say, so the people that you work with now, I feel like from what I saw on stage, like, you guys seem a lot more chill. I mean, on stage you're electric. On stage I hope so. During the show, you were like, "This is a rock gig. I want to feel like a rock star. You could do better than that." I was like, "This guy's great."
I was like, "You guys got to come up here to the front row. What are you doing? What are you doing? This is nonsense." Now, when I do an acoustic show, which I do sometimes, and I love, I mean, let's sit down in chairs. I love that.
Right.
I want, you know, at Smith's Old Bar or other places when you go to an acoustic show, you're sitting at the table, there's a candle on the table. That's electric to me.
Yeah.
I want this intimacy. But when I'm at a show and you got guys are plugged in, and you got a guy, front man who doesn't play an instrument, you know, you better, you know, and you know, one thing about, I'm thankful that that's what they did. They came up to the front, and it felt like it should, which is a rock show. And there was a lot of people there who were truly fans of music. That's where and that's why Scully put that together, and it was really great, and that was why we got to get our feet wet there.
Right.
And Ben, our drummer, that was his first show with us. He plays in he plays in a couple bands.
He's fantastic.
He's great. He's a little younger than us, so we're like, he's great because he listens to us, and he's eager, he's hungry, and he's great. I found him through my buddy Jesse Ashton. Again, Jan Smith works over there as a producer who's phenomenal. He's in a band called The World Is Watching. So Ben plays drums in that band, and he plays in a country band with our buddy Sean Thompson. And to play drums in a country thing, I think I've always been told this. I'm not sure, but I think it makes any drummer better because it's a totally different vibe.
You just have to play everything in 6/8. First one, like
right. And for rock, it's just in the pocket 2/4, call it a day. Right. Don't get fancy.
Yeah, right.
Even Dave Grohl doesn't get fancy.
Keep that driving 4 to the floor, right? Cool. That's what we want.
Rolling Stones. I mean, this is 2/4. Tommy Lee, you mentioned earlier. I mean, there's a time and place for a little bit of, you know, flash or a moment of doing some stuff.
He's really solid.
Thank you. And we're glad we have him. We played with him a couple times in the rehearsal room, and then later we were like, "What do you guys do? What do you think?" And Blake was like, "Man, he's solid. He's got potential. I mean, he's younger, but he's solid.
He's in the pocket. You know what? I always like being not really so much a musician. Oh, not so much of an instrumentalist per se. I always like watching the drummers because I feel like you can get a really good feel for a whole band's, I want to say like almost ethos by watching the drummer when they're on stage. You know, some drummers are like, they'll be in the pocket, but they'll kind of like have that far away look in their eyes. But like Ben, for example, like he's so in it. He's the watching everyone. You can just see him, his whole
he's happy
self. Yeah.
But he's a part of it. He's a part of his instrument, and that's what I love to see. But you know, it goes back to I've been spoiled with drummers, and I am not ashamed to say, shout out to Ben. I played with Rob, who's now in Skid Row. I played with him for years. And then I played Mike Froge from those who are from Atlanta know who he is. He played with us in our first show, but did studio stuff with us, and I've had the pleasure of being on stage with him a few times. He played with a band out of Atlanta called Double Drive. They were signed back in the day and written off, like we were talking about earlier. They were on Roadrunner Records at one point. Great band. And he, well, that whole band was just stupid. You almost didn't know who to watch because they were all so, you're like, oh my God. Yeah. Who do I watch? Because they're all so great. And this is the kind of guys I grew up watching.
Right.
This is what I'm saying. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to surround myself with talent. So I did that in Rockets. I did that when I was younger, and I continue to try to do that. Because while I think that I'm confident in what I do as a front man, and having great writers like Tuck help us with melody, which makes us a better band, any band better with the right melodies, right? Yeah. I want people to look at the guys in the band like I look at guys in the bands that I know, like Double Drive, for example. But anyway, Mike's such a great drummer. He played with us for a minute and in the studio. So Ben's got to look at these guys he knows that have done. Rob's done some of our videos. Ben's done one. Rob did a couple, and then Nigel Dupree, who plays with Tuck, did 2 of our songs in the studio, and Mike Froze did 2. And these are heavy hitters beyond anything. And these are guys that I wished I could play with, and now I got to do something with and collaborate with. So, again, it goes back to me being able to play with guys that I admire, that are just so talented and so great. I like to say this phrase in a lot of things in my life. I get to. I get to play with these guys. I get to write with these guys. I get to have watched these guys, and then I got to play with them or be on stage with them, or
so cool.
I got to play with my heroes over the years, and I did. I got to tour with some heroes, and get on. Some of the cats we opened up for in Rockets days were some of the biggest acts, and some weren't, and whatever, and it was just all great. And now, so Ghost of You, I'm excited about whatever's to come. We don't know. Our attitude with it is a total devil may care. We're a rock and roll band, like it, don't. We don't care. Here's the thing. Here are the songs. Here's some stuff we're doing. We're writing some new stuff. We're going to rehearse again and try to get on bills, opening up for people. Cool. You know, we're older, so you mentioned we have a little more calmness about us as individuals. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any shows coming up like immediately? And nothing? Okay. All right.
No, okay, cool. I wish we did. Now, Scully, speaking of Scully, we did talk to him. We said, hey, man, you know, so he's keeping us in mind to get on an opening bill for somebody who comes through 37 in Maine, which we're on his radar to do that. I'm lucky to know some promoters in town. The guy at Center Stage who promotes that, Brandon, he heard the stuff. He's like, this is great, which means a lot just in that. And then he goes, hey, I'll keep you in mind. Smith's Old Bar will be another one. I talked to the promoter and owner of Smith's the other day, and he liked the song, and I've had a long-standing relationship with those guys because they've just such a history here in Atlanta. But he said, let's do something. Keep your mind open up for somebody. Because right now we're at a point where, you know, we're not going to get in a van and go tour the United States at this age. And these guys have been hired guns on professional stuff, and it's just like, you know, we're at a place in our life where we're having fun. If something more comes out of it, great. And that's the thing, too. As long as it's great stuff and we're proud of it, whether anybody else likes it or not, we can go out and play a fun show. I can go do an acoustic show or whatever. I have a different relationship with some of this stuff now. Would I like to be under a label again? Would I like to go do some big tours and be on? Absolutely. It would have to make sense. And it just have to make sense. And first of all, we'd have to be offered something.
Right.
And that offer's not there right now, so it's like, whatever, who
Just
cares?
doing what
We're
you're
just having
doing.
fun. Yeah.
Cool.
Because we've kind of
You've
been there, done that to some
you've gotten
degree.
to that place.
And a lot of our friends are still doing that. And it's just wonderful that a lot of our friends get to do this for a living, and a lot of our friends have sold a lot of records. And we're happy for them, and we're happy that we've been associated with them, and we're happy that we've gotten to do what we've gotten to do because of the people we've been involved with, and all because of relationships and hopefully some decent music. And man,
Cool.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, on that note, hearing about your story, thank you so much for coming along, sharing some of your expertise and some of the stories of coming through the scene. I was just wondering if you would be able to, as we wrap up, share all of your social media, where to find you, if you're cool with that, where to find Ghost of You music on social media platforms, YouTube's, all of that.
Yeah. So Cleve Willis or Cleveland Willis. You can find my Instagram, my Facebooks, and Facebooks. So Ghost of You. Be specific, because there's a Ghost of You somewhere else.
Right. We want this Ghost of You.
We want this Ghost of You. And we do own the rights to this one.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, Ghost of You _official is their Instagram. Of course, you go to my Instagram or Ghost of You Linktree, which would probably will pop up. And YouTube, Cleve Willis, all that stuff on my Instagram. It links to all of it. And to my yoga studio. I own a hot yoga studio called Still Hot Yoga, Decatur. It's a Bikram yoga studio, and I have a wonderful business partner named Mahu, and I get to do these things, right?
It's part of what,
and
day to day.
Day to day. I get to do a little bit of acting occasionally when I get hired.
Go on a podcast and
get to go on a podcast.
I get to talk to cool musicians from Atlanta.
Well, being from Australia, I love that you're here now doing this, and that you're kind of a fresh face and name here, because you're putting a little bit more hunger into, this is great. So when you reached out to me about this, it was just, thank you so much, because it was like, hey man, this is fresh. Yeah. I mean, we love old school. But having fresh come in and learn more about the old school is great too.
I'll be honest, like as a musician myself, and as someone who's been to a lot of shows, like I always want to go up and talk to the musicians, but I've also been shy in the past. So having this just gives me like an example. I'm just going to go straight up and talk to that person. I'm like, here's my card. I run a podcast. Do you want to be on it? So it's great. I'm getting to meet people. I'm getting to network, and I get to see this community and this scene that you've been a part of for a really long time, but I'm getting to see like this iteration of it now. And it's really cool. I'm loving everyone I'm meeting, and I'm loving getting to do this. So thank you so much for coming along and being part of our podcast.
You're very welcome, and I thank you very much for having me on here and for supporting any music, especially music from Atlanta. And I love what you said earlier, sort of the underbelly. Was that what you used?
Yeah, like the undercurrent.
The undercurrent. I love that, because there is that with a bunch of old school cats that are generations above us and coming up. And there's that undercurrent. And for those coming up now and doing things now that I don't even know who they are or what they're doing, but there's got to be a scene. I don't know where they are, but they're there. I mean, you got great clubs still. Smithsonian Bar, Star Bar. Eddie's Attic, great place. Cool, East Atlanta, place. You've got the Earl. Just there's so much music going in and out. All these places in particular. That are just in 37 and Main, Scully's place.
Variety Playhouse.
I mean, a lot of these places are going to be here forever. And those specific spots that I know of that I still go to sometimes to see shows that fit somebody, So hit those spots and keep checking it out and keep supporting it. And I'll send you some links.
Yes, please do. I've got some homework to do. And if you're someone who's been watching this interview, or you've seen any of our other artist shoutouts, and you're also one of those undercurrent musicians, but you'd like to be on here, we would love to have you. I would love to interview. I'd love to chat with you, talk about your musical journey, talk about what you've got going on now, or if you know someone who you think would be great at it, hit us up on Instagram. We're at Vision One Media ATL. You can find us on Facebook. You can see all of these episodes on YouTube, Vision One Media YouTube. You can also find us on Linktree. We've got our website, Vision One Production. So contact us if you're interested in doing this. But it's been great to have you on the show, and thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Cool.
check her music out.
Yeah, me too. Peace.